What can you tell us about the band Deadhead?
Deadhead was a band that I played with briefly towards the end of their career, I guess. It was started by the guys in Touche Amore, and I actually recorded Deadhead's demo before I recorded Touche Amore's first record. I think that was kind of just them testing the waters with me. Mm-hmm. And our drummer's little brother was actually the original drummer for Deadhead, and I was a big fan of that band. Like I said, I recorded their demo, I recorded their 10-inch, and their split with my old band Cathedrals. And yeah, towards the end, he stopped playing with them, and they needed somebody for a handful of shows, so I just started playing with them. I started writing new material with them, but Touche ended up becoming this, really busy band and touring nonstop. So yeah, Deadhead just kind of fizzled out. It's not something I think they want to pursue anymore. And our last show kind of went off with a bang.
What happened there?
We played this show in Hollywood at this place called Beauty is Pain, and kids were getting kind of wild in there, but nothing out of the ordinary. It was pretty typical for like a hardcore whatever show. Not even that typical. It was just kids kind of just moving around, no big deal. And the store owner repeatedly kept yelling at us, saying that we were breaking stuff and encouraging kids to like go crazy. And the girl that owned the shop started strangling the singer for Deadhead. Just put her hands around his throat and just started choking him vigorously. And he got pissed off, and we kept playing. And then same thing, like kids just started pushing, and she just unplugged all our amps and just pushed my cymbals over and cut us off. And I think we just kind of wanted to go off on a high note like that. And that was the last Deadhead show. So.
And you mentioned that was with members of Touche Amore, and you've actually known those guys for a very long time. You've known Jeremy for, I think, 10 years.
Yeah, 10 plus years. We knew each other just from, going to shows back then when we were younger, and our old bands in high school used to play together, and, would always run into him and kept up to date with all the project he was doing. And yeah, just after I recorded Deadhead, they told me they wanted to do the first Touche full length, so I ended up doing that. And
so the Beat of a Dead Horse.
I did that record. So I did that, and then consequently, they ended up working with Ed Rose on their next one, which is the guy I interned with to do recording in Kansas. So they did their next record with him, and then after that, they did 3 splits with me. And then they recorded with Brad Wood, who's like my other idol from, working with the Smashing Pumpkins and Sunny Day. And
at the time when you were recording, did you think that album was going to resonate with people as much as it did?
I wasn't sure, because I'd never really seen them before that. They're a band that a lot of people jumped on the Touche boat really early on, really fast. Like it really caught a lot of steam. It came at the right time, So I knew the songs were really catchy. It was great performances by everyone on that record. The drummer that they had playing on that record was an old friend of mine as well, this kid Z. And just like once we finished his drum tracks, he did all his drum tracks for that record in an hour.
Wow.
And they were insane. Like his performance is awesome. Like Jeremy did all his vocals in like 2 or 3 hours for that record. Like
that's crazy.
Everyone just killed it. I think we did that whole record in 4 days. So like I definitely knew it was gonna it was gonna be a cool record, but I didn't know it was gonna go on to be on its whatever. It's had so many presses this far, so, and obviously like one of their biggest songs is off that record, so yeah, it's cool. It was a cool thing to be a part of.
And we were talking about Deadhead, and Deadhead put out a split with Cathedrals, which is one of your other bands. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Cathedrals was a band started in 2005 by my buddy Eddie Mosqueda, who also played in Polygraph and the Caffeines. Who were, I played with Polygraph as well for a while with our guitar player Jeremiah, and he started Cathedrals, wanted to do a heavy band, and we were all listening to stuff like Coalesce, Jesuit, Tragedy, His Hero's Gone, and wanted to do a project like that. So I originally played guitar for the band, and we had a singer, and one day he didn't show up to a show, so we ended up playing as a 3-piece with me singing and playing guitar, and it stayed like that for a while, and then eventually I was just the singer, and I was in that band for 5 awesome years, and we didn't do much because it was one of those things where all of us had jobs where we couldn't tour. It was never going to be a full-time band.
And then it all leads up to the formation of Silver Snakes. Tell us about the first Silver Snake show. I know that was in Pomona. It was in Pomona
at Aladdin Jr. It was pretty just typical show. Just got asked to play. It wasn't anything big. We didn't make a very big deal about it either. It was mainly just friends. It was a way of us testing the waters and just see like, all right, can we pull off a live set? So we only had like 5 songs at the time, and we did that and felt good about it. Played again the next day, and both shows were with like pop punk and hardcore bands, and it was just us really testing the waters, engaging how a band like us went over with people. And people liked it, and they knew it was something a little different, and we just just trying to find a niche for it, which was hard to do on a local level when there not many bands, you know,
Yeah.
in that our genre or whatever.
And you eventually met Steve Choi from RX Bandits. How did you meet Steve?
His best friend, Roger Camaro, who also worked on our first record along with Steve, and he actually worked on our new record as well, recorded our bass player Mike's old band Dear Life. So just, you know, through him, the Dear Life guys met Steve. I used to go on tour with Dear Life. I was close with all them.
And Steve produced Pictures of a Floating World.
Yeah, he produced our first album. And yeah, I mean, he heard the demos and he knew it was something, you know, had like, that record has much more of like a 90s vibe to it.
Yeah.
And it's very like, to me, it just sounds like mid-90s, like college rock or something, you know? It just sounds like a heavier version of like the Gin Blossoms or something. And, you know, we're listening to the same stuff. We all liked Shiner and Hum and Failure, Quicksand, whatever. Like, that's what all these guys listen to. So, yeah, it's something he wanted to do. It would be different for him. He got into more production since RX was winding down at the moment. And, yeah, he did that record, and, yeah, it was a cool experience.
And you played some show, or a couple shows with Pieced Out.
Yeah, his other band with Roger, Pieced Out. Yeah, did a few shows with them whenever they were actually playing, because they're all over the place, all over the country. So, yeah, we did that. I mean, those guys, they're just all just friendships that we have. So everything that came out of that was just from us being friends. It was never like, oh, how do we contact this guy for this or whatever. It was just, it all came together really organically.
So, on a different subject, what was it like playing with Coheed and Cambria?
It was awesome. It's one of my favorite shows to date. That along with playing with Shiner, which was in the same month. And
The Egg Reunion shows?
The Egg Reunion shows, and we played with Braid the night before we played with Shiner. So
very cool.
It was like playing with a couple bands I grew up on, all within this few weeks. Yeah, that Coheed show was insane. We drove out to Tucson, and their fans are diehards. There was kids there from San Diego, kids there from Texas, kids there, you know, everywhere. And it was an off date for their tour with Iron Maiden.
Whoa.
Yeah, so, yeah, we got asked to play Us and Ages, and we just hopped in a van and drove out there, played the show, we opened, and it was insane. Like, the reaction was something we'd never seen before for our band. We did really great that night, just in terms of, like, people bought tons of records, and, like, anytime we go to Arizona now, like, kids will travel wherever it is because they're hooked on us from that Coheed show, so it really paid off in the long run.
That's awesome. Now, is it true that you were once held hostage by strippers in Louisiana?
It was
on Bourbon Street.
It was God, that was such a disaster of a situation.
What was the situation?
That was just us, two of us walking down Bourbon Street, our first time in town, and just literally, like, some of the clubs there, they run out and, you know, they get in your face and they're just like, yo, come in here. Most of the time they're just kind of yelling at you, like, yo, like, come in here, come in here, come in here. And, like, me and our guitarist were just literally in the middle of the street, walking, focused, just moving straight, probably trying to get beignets for some of the other guys or something. And these two girls run out into the middle of the street, grab us by the wrist, and literally drag us full force. And before we even know what's going on, before any of the rest of our band, everyone had been drinking, it was a day off, around Halloween, around the Pride Parade, around everything. It was just a mess in Bourbon Street. We're in this strip club, and yeah, they're dragging us in there, and we're at the bar, surrounded by bouncers and strippers that are like, what are you gonna order? What, getting in our face, like, what are you gonna get? Us saying, like, yo, we need to go find our friends, like, we need to get out of here. And they're like, no, your friends are gone, like, you're with us now. Literally don't want to let us leave, and we had to pretty much pull some, like, hey, what's that? And run around them sort of
and
thing.
leave.
Yeah, just leave. And
moving forward back to Silver Snake, so back to recording, you have your own recording studio, the Earth Capital. What was your inspiration to become an engineer?
It was mainly out of necessity. I grew up around it. I grew up in the studio with my dad on the weekends, and yeah, when I was younger, I had a 4-track. I had a karaoke machine, and I would just record, like, Smashing Pumpkins, like, guitar parts over each other and loop them, and, you know, learn how to do all that stuff. So as I got older, when I was around 18 or 19, I had the opportunity to get the space that I'm in now. I've had it for 10 years, my studio in downtown. And yeah, I just did it to record my own band at the time, and then just kept going, recording friends' bands, and it's just snowballed into that, and that's the only job I've had for the last decade. So,
and how does that help? How does that translate in terms of recording for Silver Snakes, particularly with Year of the Snake?
It comes in handy because you know, it especially like budget-wise, where you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about who you're paying for this stuff. It's cool to just be able to do a lot of it on my own.
Yeah.
I think people would be surprised to find out that I don't sit there for 6 months working on our record, whereas a lot of people in the position I'm in, that have their own studios would do that. They'd nitpick everything, make sure it's perfect, whatever. I'm the complete opposite with this band, with recording.
Interesting.
I want, especially with Year of the Snake, I wanted everything to be completely off of instinct. So I wrote most of the songs 6 weeks before we recorded them. They were all done in like a month and a half. I had a ton of songs demoed, scrapped them all, kept 3, and then just rewrote everything and recorded demos. We worked on it at a few practices, and literally, like, before even recording each song, each drum track, we would jam the song once, and Daniel would be like, cool, like, should I do this fill? Should I do this? And I'm like, yeah, let's roll with that. Like, should it be this fast? Let's play it faster. So everything was completely done on feel, and I love the way it came out because of that. Our first record, I mean, I enjoy the songs, and it is what it is, but it's something where I could hear, it sounds too polished for me. I could hear that, and I could hear all the nitpicking. I could hear all the takes. I could hear everything, all the effort to make it that way. And when I hear Year of the Snake, I hear us. I hear what we sound like live. I mean, we're a bit more raw and heavy live than we are on record just by default, because of our backgrounds and the way we're used to playing live. But on that record, I can hear, like, the grittiness of, us as musicians.
So what do you tell aspiring engineers or aspiring musicians in terms of becoming successful?
The one thing, well, for engineers, it's really hard for me to even consider myself an engineer. I feel like I sit there and push buttons. I feel like I'm doing an actual job when I'm producing a record, in which case that's when I'm playing a more active part, like in the process of the actual
in the creativity.
Songs. Yeah. When it comes to that, it like, all I tell people is just, like, don't underestimate yourself. It's like, a lot of it, I would say 99% of it's all in your ear. Like, and it's one of those things where I think you're either born with it or you're not. And, it sounds kind of, might discourage people, but if you're coming from a background of, like, a technical background, or like a background that doesn't involve, like, pitch or rhythm or something like that, you might be able to understand these huge, like, Neve consoles and all this rack gear and stuff like that, but you're not going to hear when a singer's out of tune. You're not going to know when a note falls flat at a part. You know what I mean? There's these, like, the nuances of a performance that you're just not going to get. And that's something that I think comes with being a producer. Whereas being an engineer, like, I'll be straight up about it. Like, I'm sitting there with, like, my heels up on my desk, just, like, pressing record. So in that case, I usually don't encourage nor discourage people to go to school for it, but I mean, it didn't work for me. I went to recording school for a month and dropped out, and I got accepted to another one that was going to be like $20,000, and it fell through at the last minute, and I'm glad it did, because I was able to learn everything on my own. I have a lot of friends that went to school for recording, and it definitely didn't pay off. They're all doing different things. They're all working retail or doing different kinds of jobs, and it's cool to have, like, a certificate in it. But the only advice I'd give them is just to learn as much as they can on their own. Take advantage of the internet and, like, books and everything to just teach yourself what you want to do, and just don't try to emulate anyone else's style with recording as a producer. And that's something I've always shied away from, and I'm really open with bands to that. I'll even tell bands, like, I'm not a fan of, like, pop punk music. I've never been into it, and I'll tell most pop punk bands that approach me, like, hey, I'm not the guy to, like, if you want me to produce this, I'm not gonna be into it, because I'm just gonna tell you everything sounds bad, because I don't like that kind of music, which sounds awful. But yeah, it's just being honest with yourself. And same thing goes for being in a band. I mean, we play music that we want to hear, like, 100%. I speaking for myself, I don't play music for anyone else except for me. I write a song because it doesn't exist yet, and I want to hear it. I'll have something in my head that I want to be able to listen to, and that's the sole purpose that I've ever gotten into music.